Hello everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into a powerful passage from the book of Joshua that is more than just ancient history. It is a prophetic message for us right now. In Joshua chapter 23, the great leader Joshua gives his farewell address to Israel. He begins with a solemn reminder, saying, "You yourselves have seen everything the Lord your God has done. It was the Lord your God who fought for you." This statement looks back at God's incredible acts of deliverance and looks forward to his promises for the future. And just like in Joshua's day, God's faithfulness in the past is the very foundation for what he will do for his people in the final generation. Let's look closer at Joshua's words. The nation of Israel was finally at peace after years of war. But Joshua saw spiritual danger on the horizon. Peace can often lead to complacency, so he calls Israel to remember two crucial things. First, what God has already done. He defeated their enemies and fulfilled every single one of his promises. Second, he tells them what God will do. He will continue to drive out the nations before them, as long as Israel remains faithful to him. This pattern perfectly mirrors God's final work for the church today, a review of his leading in our lives, a call to be faithful to our covenant with him, and a promise of his divine intervention. The review isn't just for old time's sake, it's prophetic. A central theme in Joshua's speech is that victory was never won by Israel's own strength. He makes it crystal clear. It was the Lord your God who fought for you. Think about it, the walls of Jericho fell, giants fled, and powerful nations collapsed. Not because Israel had a mighty army, but because God himself was fighting for them. This truth is at the heart of the gospel. The Apostle Paul tells us in Colossians that Christ triumphed over principalities and powers at the cross. And in Ephesians, he reminds us that our battle isn't against flesh and blood, but against unseen spiritual forces. Our spiritual warfare is mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. As Ellen White wrote, all the victories gained are gained through Christ. The shepherd's rod literature echoes this, stating that God's people are delivered not by might or power, but by his direct intervention. So, Joshua's reminder is a prophetic pattern for us. Only God can conquer the spiritual enemies that stand in the way of finishing his work. This leads us to the phrase "you yourselves have seen," which serves as a sign of concern, a divine warning. When God's people forget how he has led them, they start to drift and compromise. We are repeatedly warned about this danger. One of the most well-known statements is, "We have nothing to fear for the future, except as we forget how God has led us in the past." The greatest danger facing the church today is forgetting God's past guidance and becoming complacent in our current spiritual state. This makes Joshua's message incredibly urgent for us, not just his history, but his prophecy. So, what about the future? Joshua 23 verse 5 holds both a promise and a condition. The promise is that God will drive out the enemies and Israel will possess the land. The condition is their faithfulness to God's covenant. This has a direct parallel for the end times. Scripture shows that God will first purify his church, removing the enemies from within. Then, he will empower a purified remnant to finish the work of spreading the gospel to the entire world. And finally, he will establish his promised kingdom of peace. Every one of these promises is anchored in God's unchanging faithfulness. As it says in Joshua, "There failed not aught of any good thing. All came to pass." The faithful today can stand on that same immovable foundation. So, what's the final application for us? As Israel stood on the verge of entering their promised kingdom, Joshua reminded them that their entire destiny depended on remembering how God had fought for them. The exact same is true for the last generation today. God fought for ancient Israel, and he fights for his church now. He drove out nations then, and he removed spiritual enemies today. He kept his promises to them, and he will fulfill every single prophecy for us. Joshua's message is a prophetic sign. What God has done is the absolute guarantee of what he will do. We don't need to fear the future. We only need to fear forgetting his leading in the past. Thanks for watching. If this message resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more content like this. See you next time.